It's a proud Independence Day tradition. Naturalization ceremonies for new U.S. citizens across the land, including one at Monticello, the home of Thomas Jefferson. Yet even as others take the oath of citizenship this Thursday, a refugee from the Caribbean is continuing his fight for the right to stay, which is where, as senior contributor Ted Koppel tells us, the members of Ainsley's army come in.
This is the story of how Ainsley Demus, a 42-year-old asylum seeker from Haiti, came to be living in Melody Hart and Gary Benjamin's upstairs bedroom in Cleveland Heights, Ohio.
So here in English it says front of house.
Exactly.
Your room.
Yeah.
Bringing someone who is, after all, still a stranger into your home, though, and saying, okay, there's your room. Did that require a lengthy conversation between the two of you?
No. Not really. We knew that'd be his room without talking to each other.
Hey, thanks everyone for coming.
Gary, Melody, and a bunch of neighbors who began calling themselves Ainsley's Army were outraged that an asylum seeker who had committed no crime was spending endless months in jail. He clearly needed help, and they were ready to provide it.
I wanted to make sure we got an update on everything to help Ainsley.
But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. Back in Haiti, where he was a teacher, Ainsley spoke Creole and French.
What did you teach?
Mathematics and physics, ethics and pedagogy.
You know, pedagogy, the theory and practice of education. Ainsley Damus is an educated man. His troubles began back in Haiti in 2014, when one of his former teachers went into politics. Ainsley began peppering his own lectures with references to that teacher's corruption.
Bad.
Yes, very bad.
In retaliation, he says in a court statement, the politicians sent thugs to beat him and threaten his life.
My father called me, leave your house. Leave your house.
Ainsley was afraid, he says, that if he stayed, his wife and 2 children would be in danger. So he left Haiti, ending up in Brazil. After 18 months, he says he found Brazil too violent, claims he encountered too much discrimination.
So you decide you're going to come
The United States.
to the United States.
Baja California is where Ainsley sought asylum, where he was processed by the Border Patrol and ultimately shipped to a jail outside Cleveland to await his day in court. That turned into a very long stay.
2 years, 27 days. This is my story.
Understand, a jail is not the same as a prison. Jails are meant for short stays. This jail doesn't have any exercise facilities, inside or outside. And those windows, you can't see through them.
So you never saw daylight? You never saw the sun, the stars, the moon?
No.
Never.
No.
After his first 6 months in jail, Ainsley got word that an immigration judge had ruled in his favor.
He granted asylum.
Yeah.
Good news.
Oh, yes.
Well, not so good. Twice, Ainsley was granted asylum by immigration courts, and twice the government successfully appealed. All the while, Ainsley stayed in jail. According to Cecilia Wang, she's the deputy legal director of the American Civil Liberties Union, the long-term detention of asylum seekers is pretty commonplace these days.
The vast majority of people who are now in immigration custody, 50,000 human beings on any given day, have no criminal record. They are fighting their deportation cases, and the majority of them don't pose a flight risk or a danger, and we're spending our taxpayer money to lock people up in these abominable conditions.
The Trump administration makes no bones about trying to discourage asylum seekers, and Ainsley Demus was certainly getting discouraged.
He'd been in jail about 14 months when we decided we would apply to be sponsors.
For more than a year, Ainsley's only visitor had been his pro bono lawyer, until one day, out of the blue, Melody Hart and Gary Benjamin showed up.
Demus, you have visit. No, not me. I don't have nobody in Cleveland.
Melody, a financial consultant, and her husband Gary, an attorney, learned about Ainsley through a friend. They went to visit him, but even that was an arm's-length proposition.
You sit there and you pick up the phone and you look at him in a monitor. He sees you at a monitor.
Now, here's the problem. Noise level, hard to hear.
Right.
You don't speak French, he doesn't speak English at that point.
It's tough.
I don't understand melody. She's talk.
But you understand that you have a sponsor.
Yes, I understand this.
That you
name
understand.
Sponsor the same. After Melody and Gary come, my life changed.
It was the difference between a life of isolation and having a support network.
What we could do is we put money in his commissary account.
He wanted to be able to go to the commissary because he couldn't get soap or toothpaste or a toothbrush. They didn't hand those out. You had to buy them.
This one was when
To give him a connection to the outside world, Melody and Gary started sending Ainsley those photographs of their house to show him where he'd be living when he came out.
here's your room, and here's the yard, and here's the dog. But then after that, we would take pictures of the seasons because he hadn't seen it. So we took pictures of the leaves turning. At some point, we sent him snow pictures.
Loneliness, though, remained a constant problem.
He wanted more companionship, so we started talking to people about sending him letters and sending him cards. And when we couldn't go on some Sundays, other people would fill in.
Which is how Ainsley's army got its start. Its forces rallied outside the ICE office in Cleveland, urging his release from jail. They began holding regular meetings. At this point, Gary and Melody still hadn't been officially approved as sponsors. Ainsley's release from jail was rejected on the grounds that he was a flight risk and lacked community support.
So we did our second application. We tried to make it bulletproof. We had our bishop endorsing us, 3 doctors, a local judge, a priest, a rabbi. It was a pretty good showing of support in the community.
And it was rejected again.
Flight risk and not enough contacts in the community.
That's when the ACLU filed a petition stating that Ainsley's detention was unlawful. The government was keeping him locked up indefinitely and denying his release without providing any evidence.
We went to court, and we chartered a bus.
I'm Melody Hart, I'm one of the sponsors.
And got Ainsley's Army on the bus.
How big a group?
It was about 35,
Yep.
about 35. We filled the courtroom. They had to pull in more chairs.
Which clearly had the intended impact on the judge.
She said, well, you know, it says here that he has no community ties. Who are all these people?
Right. And?
And she says, so I'm just going to cross that off, that that's not a valid reason.
And last November, before the judge had a chance to rule, the government finally agreed to release Ainsley from jail.
Very, very, very happy.
On the condition that he wear an ankle bracelet and live with his sponsors, Melody and Gary, while his asylum case is being appealed.
I'm Brenda. Hi, Brenda. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Ainsley's army is still active.
So we're working on his resume.
And there are raffle tickets right here.
Last winter, they held a fundraiser raising $10,000.
We want to make some money for you, Ainsley, for your legal fees and for your family.
Thank you. Thank you.
He is studying English diligently. In class,
Go to the other group and say they.
Yeah, they.
and also with volunteer tutors from his army.
Good.
He now gets himself to one part-time job doing maintenance at a church. He also works part-time as an electrician restoring houses. As for the troops in Ainsley's army, they're involved in more of a crusade than a military operation.
A reason why I got involved is because I felt that the way that Ainsley was treated was so un-American. I wanted to stand up for principles that I think are important for this country.
You know what? Why am I living at this age if I don't try to make things better? I don't see any purpose in my life if I don't speak out.
I think we're all people of faith, deep faith in our values and how we treat other human beings.
Which brings us back to Gary and Melody and that upstairs bedroom now occupied by Ainsley Demus. All in all, it could be 2 years before his asylum case is finally resolved.
You guys are up for that?
Well, 2 years from the start, so what are we, 5 months in?
Yes, it's not 2 years anymore.
Yeah.
Ainsley video chats with his wife and kids every day. And yes, he is thinking about how and when he can bring them to, where else? Cleveland.
I told my wife all the time, Cleveland is very cool. I don't have a life before. People de Cleveland give me